Welcome to our Animal Justice Academy Lunchtime Live, folks. Our theme today is we're actually doing a training, our last chance to stop the federal ag-gag bill in Canada, and with our wonderful Animal Justice Executive Director, Camille Labchuk. Now, I know Camille doesn't need much of an introduction, but I'm going to give her the official introduction anyway. So Camille is one of Canada's leading animal rights lawyers and our ED at Animal Justice, which is Canada's only animal law advocacy organization. And Camille, she's worked to protect animals for over 15 years for her young age. As a lawyer, Camille seeks out cases that enhance the legal interests of animals, expose hidden animal suffering, and result in meaningful policy changes. As an advocate, Camille's work includes documenting the commercial seal kill on Canada's East Coast, exposing cruelty in farming, protecting the free speech rights of animal advocates, and campaigns against ag-gag laws, trophy hunting, circuses, zoos, aquariums, shark finning, puppy mills, and more. Camille is a graduate of the University of Toronto Faculty of Law and Mount Allison University. She's a frequent lecturer and media commentator on animal law issues. And Camille lives in Toronto, just a stone's throw away from me, with her beautiful cat, Cecily. Welcome, Camille. It's always so good to have you here in AJA.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly. I'm always so happy to be here with you and with the rest of you. It's so good to see so many faces again.
Yeah, you see enough of me. It's just good. It's good for you to have some fresh faces. So folks, as we were talking about with the sort of wild wrap-ups of Senate and Parliament, there has been some big movement on this federal ag-gag law in the wrong direction. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But first of all, Camille, can you give us a rundown of this federal ag-gag bill that we all sort of sounds very familiar because we did something huge around this. It seems like just yesterday, but it was a couple of years ago. So can you give us a little bit of history and sort of what this bill is all about and what it threatens?
Yeah, thanks for that, Kimberly. I'd love to give a little bit of a history lesson on this. And I know for years now, we've all been hearing quite a lot about ag-gag legislation, and it can be difficult to keep track of province, federal government, which provinces passed ag-gag laws, where animal justice is suing, and all of that. So just really briefly, if you're really new to this topic, you would know that ag-gag laws, or you wouldn't know, but ag-gag laws were an American import. So states first started passing ag-gag laws that do various things to restrict people from filming and exposing suffering inside farms. Sometimes they would say you can't take photos inside farms. Sometimes they would say you can't enter onto a farm using false pretenses, which targets people who are whistleblowers and might get a job undercover on the farm. Sometimes they would take other approaches to trying to shut down these images and videos from making the 6 p.m. news. Canada escaped those ag-gag laws for a long time, frankly, because there weren't that many undercover investigations here. But circa 2012, 2013, we started to see undercover exposés show some of the worst cruelty inside farms in Canada. And of course, the meat industry immediately started lobbying for ways to shut down those videos. Instead of shutting down the cruelty and improving situations, their approach was to try to stop people from learning the truth about what happens in their industry.
Totally makes sense, right, Camille?
Yeah, it makes sense if you're a big corporation that wants to protect your profits, I suppose, and doesn't care about animals or human rights.
Yeah.
So, and then the other context to ag-gag laws in Canada is that another tactic that was becoming highly successful in terms of getting publicity here was people doing sit-ins of farms, people going onto farms, sitting there, live streaming, calling the media, and just exposing to the public through those, live streams and through the publicity what happens to animals in really poor situations. And I know we've got a couple people here today who participated in those types of events. So yeah, Canada first started looking at ag-gag laws in Alberta and then Ontario. Those passed in 2019 and then 2020. Animal Justice is currently suing in Ontario to try to overturn the ag-gag law because we think it's unconstitutional. Quebec has been considering, PEI passed a version of ag-gag laws that is less serious because it wouldn't explicitly prohibit undercover investigations. And Manitoba did something too, more geared at stopping people from seeing inside slaughter trucks going into slaughterhouses full of animals. So there's various ag-gag laws in the country. And today we're going to talk about the federal ag-gag bill. So there's no federal ag-gag law yet that's enacted, but there are attempts by a conservative MP named John Barlow to make a federal ag-gag law. Now, He first introduced this bill in the midst of all this legislation kind of coming out around the same time, circa 2019, 2020. And Kimberly alluded to this a little bit earlier, but Animal Justice and Animal Justice Academy members were very, very active in fighting against this gag bill. So let's just briefly touch on what it does. It is a bill that sounds like it's about diseases and biosecurity. It amends a statute called the Health of Animals Act, which is supposed to protect animals from getting diseases and supposed to protect the food supply from diseased animals. And it says basically that a person can't go onto a farm with permission in a way that could introduce a pathogen capable of affecting animals. Now, the problem with this is if you don't think about it too carefully, it sounds kind of okay. We don't want animals getting diseases and maybe trespassing is bad. But the truth of it is that the bill would only apply to somebody who was there without permission. It wouldn't apply to diseases caused by farmers. And we know that farmers are actually the biggest source of disease risks on farms because of their poor biosecurity practices. That's things like sharing needles amongst animals, sharing farm equipment with tractors going from one infected barn to another uninfected barn, passing along disease. That includes things like the bovine spongiform encephalopathy crisis, BSC, or mad cow disease. That's where farmers fed the ground up remains of dead cows to other live cows and caused diseases. So we know that practices on farms already cause disease. We also know that animal advocates aren't the source of disease. There's never been a documented case of this happening in the country.
And we actually have a report on that, Camille. So yeah.
Yeah, Animal Justice analyzed decades worth of data from the federal government about diseases that have taken place on farms. And what we found is that it's usually farmers that cause the risk, or wild animals coming onto a farm, such as, wild pigeon who has avian influenza going into a chicken farm because of, poor practices that allow those birds in and passing that on to other birds. Or sometimes infected farm workers, like farm workers who had COVID-19 and gave that disease to minks in BC. Which of course is very risky because minks could be incubators for variants of COVID-19 that could later affect humans and undermine vaccine effectiveness. So there's lots of risk factors, but frankly, animal advocates are not one of them. So when he first introduced this bill, you all did an awesome job of lobbying against it and managed to convince the New Democrats to introduce an amendment at the committee stage so that the bill would apply to everyone. So it would actually kind of be a helpful bill and that it would address farm risks caused by farmers. Of course, the farmers probably didn't like that very much because they know that their practices aren't great. And they know that they could then be at risk of prosecution for standard farm practices that cause risks. So thankfully, that amendment went through and then the bill died when an election was called in 2021. So we all cheered that. It was a huge victory for animal justice and all the Academy members who worked and met with their MPs on this. Then unfortunately, John Barlow comes back after the election and reintroduces the bill, but this time it's worse. So not only would it punish people who are on farms without permission with fines of up to $500,000 or jail time. So jail just for going onto a farm without asking. But it would also target this time people who bring things onto farms without permission. So it says, a person who's there unlawfully or brings in a thing. And we think that could mean undercover cameras. So we think they're explicitly trying to make sure that people cannot bring cameras onto farms, even if they otherwise have permission to be there, without being prosecuted and facing these huge risky fines and jail time. And of course, in provinces that already have AGAG laws, which is Ontario and Alberta, that ban undercover investigations entirely, they could be doubly prosecuted by the federal government too, and not only hit with provincial fines, but also federal fines and jail time. So it's an extremely, extremely dangerous bill. And that's why we have to do everything we can to oppose it.
Yeah, we are already fighting. Animal Justice is taking Ontario to court over their very draconian animal ag laws. And the first time around, the federal bill was bad, but we were like, okay, well, it will refer, it will pertain to trespassers. But this time there is a real threat that it could shut down any kind of footage coming out of farms, right, Camille?
We think so. It's really troubling. The fact that they say, a person who's there unlawfully or somebody who brings in a thing, that implies that not only is it an offense if someone were to trespass on the farm, which, I'll just point out is already an offense provincially. And often people are prosecuted under the criminal code too, including people here in this meeting today for being unlawfully on a farm. So there's ways that the law can already address trespassers. But what it adds this time around, it's an amendment that the Bloc Québécois introduced last time the bill was being discussed, that says a person or a thing that they bring onto a farm or throw onto a farm could be at risk. So that means that perhaps a farmer has given permission for a worker to be there, but they ask the worker to sign a form saying that they won't bring any items or cameras onto the farm. And if they do, that's a trespass. That means that they could be prosecuted potentially under this legislation and hit with massive fines or jail time. And it applies not just to individuals, but to organizations as well. So it's very, very clear that they're trying to target animal protection groups here, not just individuals who go onto farms. That means animal justice, if we did an undercover expose, could be at risk of these massive fines too, not only the undercover investigator who actually has a job on the farm.
Yeah, $500,000, folks. And knowing what the budgets of animal organizations are in Canada, you can imagine how crippling that would be. So yeah, so it's very serious. And so Camille, yesterday there was some movement on this I mentioned. Can you explain where we're at?
Yeah, so here's where things stand. And the legislative process is a little bit complex, but essentially there's 3 stages to a bill. First stage is it gets introduced. That's really pro forma. That's really easy. So the bill was introduced previously over a year ago. The second stage is it gets debated for 2 hours and then it gets voted on. That's called second reading. And so Bill C-275 had those 2 hours of debate. And yesterday it got voted on and it was approved by enough MPs, i.e. most MPs. Actually, the only MPs who didn't vote for it were Elizabeth May and Mike Morris, who are Green Party MPs, and Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, who many of you know is a Liberal MP who's on our side and considers himself a supporter of animal rights. So
Unbelievable.
Because that bill passed the second reading vote, it will now go to a committee to be studied. And that's where parliamentarians on the Agriculture Committee will hear from witnesses, hopefully from animal justice, definitely from all the farm lobbyists, and they will decide whether the bill should be amended in any way. After the committee stage is over and the committee makes amendments, it goes back to the House of Commons again for a final vote. That's third reading vote. So we've passed second reading. It is going to committee likely in the fall or as soon as that committee has time to hear it. And then it will be potentially amended. So yeah, Kimberly, at this stage, as I just mentioned, all the parties except for the Green Party for the most part, and Nathaniel Erskine-Smith is an individual, voted against the legislation. I don't want to make it sound like they are all in support of banning undercover investigations, because they're not. There's some important distinctions here. So the Liberals last time around did not support the bill at all. They voted against it going to committee. And the reason is that they said it was intruding on provincial jurisdiction over trespass. They thought it was too much for the CFIA, which enforces biosecurity rules and health of animals rules to enforce, and some other reasons. So they didn't support it. The NDP did support it to go to the committee, but they were very troubled by the anti-free speech provisions, the anti-animal provisions. And so they were the ones who introduced those amendments last time around. So although the Liberals and NDP both supported it to go to committee, that's not necessarily something that we should take as them being so, full-heartedly in support of the bill. They have both said that they want to see amendments at the committee. They think maybe there's something there that could be beneficial for biosecurity, but it needs to be changed. The problem is that we don't yet know what the Liberals plan to introduce at committee or what the NDP does either. So there's still a really real threat, but our opportunity next is to get it amended at committee with the support of the Liberals and the support of the NDP.
Yeah, and just to remind folks that we're at the same place we were 2 years ago when we jumped in and started meeting with MPs. It was at the committee stage, and that is the stage where people are really good. MPs are really going to start listening and considering the issues. Okay, so it's by far a done deal, and not a done deal. And we need to be able to get as many MPs clued into what this bill is about. Because Camille, we've talked about this before, but MPs have so many bills to consider. I mean, they are just sort of following their party generally, and unless they get more information that that clues them into, wow, this is a big mistake, and that's going to be our job.
Yeah, that's exactly right. MPs get hit with, votes every single day of legislation that they don't even have time to read. So they rely on their parties telling them how to vote on things. And just because someone votes a certain way doesn't mean that they personally will support that or that they won't do good things at the committee level. So we have an opportunity right now to show MPs, especially in the Liberal and the NDP caucus, that there is broad opposition to AGAG laws and that this cannot move forward as drafted. And what ends up happening is individual MPs who are in those parties, they hear from constituents like you and lobby groups like us, and they take those concerns to usually two places. First is the agriculture critic of their party. So every party has a critic that corresponds to a ministerial portfolio. And in this case, there's an agriculture minister for the Liberals, and then there's an agriculture critic for the NDP, whose name is Alistair McGregor, who was a huge ally who introduced those amendments last time. So MPs will hear from you, and then those concerns will filter up to the minister, to the Prime Minister's office, to the agriculture critic in the NDP. And that's how the party hierarchy will start to become concerned about people's reaction to this really dangerous bill.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have a plan, folks, and it really involves you because we need numbers. And Animal Justice Academy members, you have been trained, you have better, sort of knowledge than the average sort of animal lover or even a lot of animal advocates. You've had some training as far as, lobbying and reaching out to MPs. And I know some of you are going, but I don't. That's okay. But we need people that are invested enough in this to just do a little bit of the legwork and to be willing to step up for animals. Now, some of you may already be going, no way, I'm not doing it. I'm not meeting with my MP. Just stay with us. And because we've got a few different options. All right. So Camille, let's take folks through what the game plan is going to be.
Yeah, so we want everyone to meet with their MPs. Now, I recognize as we've talked here, we think the Liberals and the NDP are most willing to listen to us on this. They are concerned about animal protection. The NDP has always been very supportive. The Liberals have just championed a bunch of legislation. We are hopeful that they're going to listen to our concerns. So if you have a Liberal or an NDP MP, you have a special opportunity here to influence them. Now, if you have a Conservative MP or a Bloc MP, all is not lost. It's still really important that people in those parties know that even though they're getting lobbied very heavily by the farmers, and the Conservatives in the Bloc often support the farmers, that average people out there just aren't going to vote for them if they continue with this AGAG BS. So we think it's really still important for you to meet with those MPs too, but keeping the focus on Liberal or New Democratic MPs. And if you have a Green member of Parliament, if you're in Saanich Gulf Islands or in Kitchener with Elizabeth Mayor Mike Morris, you can meet with them as well, or just thank them for the position they've already taken. They will be opposed to this in the future, but their support won't go very far because they only got 2 seats in the House. So yeah, we're asking people to meet with your MPs and ask them to introduce amendments that were similar to the ones that we saw last time from Alistair McGregor of the NDP. So what we're saying is amend the bill to remove this part about a thing coming onto a farm, which could affect cameras, but to make the bill apply to everybody. So if somebody who's a trespasser or a farm worker or a farm owner introduces a disease risk on a farm, they're equally liable for that risk. It does not target people who are there without permission. So that's the thrust of the amendments, and we have all of that written down in various documents that I think we'll go over.
Yes, and so that is we have done up, just so that you know, we're going to talk in detail about this right now, but we have for your use, first of all, an instruction document that's going to take you through everything from contacting your MP's office to the meeting and some tips around the meeting and talking points that you could bring up at the meeting. All right, but what Camille said is basically the gist of it. And then we also have a document that is a briefing notes, a briefing document for your MP that you can print off as is, and you can take with you, or you can send ahead of time, whichever feels better to you, or you can leave it with your MP after the meeting. And we also we're going to have an action tracking document where you can find out if there's other people in your riding. If you are just like, there's no way that you can do this by yourself, you figure, and you want to buddy up with somebody in your riding, we're going to get everybody that we can, that's here today to at least put your name and email in the tracking document. And even if you're not sure about meeting with your MP, just so that we can sort of start to understand who's in what riding. And also maybe there'll just be a whole big group, like maybe there'll be a few of you in a riding and you're just going to be one person who's, sits there and, supports, so I just, everybody that's here today, I want you to put your name and your email into the tracking document that I'm actually, Kirsten, you can share it right here, right now. And actually, Camille, do you mind if I share that right now and just show folks a little bit about that? Okay, I'll just do that really quickly. So, sorry, I've got many documents up here right now. Okay. Screen. Okay, so can you see this tracking document right now?
I can.
Yeah. Okay, great. Perfect. So when you go on this tracking document, and I see a bunch of you coming in here, you're first of all just going to go over to these little 3 lines. Okay. And that is going to give you all of the, so we've got it sorted according to provinces, and then according to ridings. All right. And so you're going to be able to go through. Now, if you do not know what riding you're in, there is a handy dandy little link here, and somebody also shared one in the chat. You can just go to this link and it's going to tell you what riding you're in. When you know what riding you're in, you just go to your province and then you go to the riding. And let's just say we're going to go here to Carleton. And right here in one of these little lines, you're going to put your name, you're going to put your email, you're going to say, are you planning on meeting with your MP? And if you're like, yeah, I'm ready to go, put yes. And if you would you meet with your MP if you are with a peer? And so that if you're like on the fence, but you're like, if I have support, I would do it, put yes in there. And if you're not like, you're like, nope, not meeting with my MP, just put your name and email in. So again, just so for future, we're going to start keeping a little bit better track here of who's in what riding. And so things come up, issues come up in your riding, we're going to be able to track you a little bit more and alert you of what's going on. All right. So, and I will also just, while I'm here, this is the document that's just going to give you the nice little overview, some other resources if you'd like, points to make with your MP, and again, we'll get into this in a second. You do not need to know all of this, but we just want to give you everything that you might want to have, to be able to share. And then, basically what you want to do with the meeting is you want to wet their whistle. Okay. You want to put a little bit of doubt in their mind that this is something they want to back up. And then you're going to leave the briefing notes with them, which is right. Sorry, folks. I need to just find that. Okay. Right here. So this is actually a document that you're going to be able to leave with your MP. Okay. All fleshed out and ready to go. So it's going to be super easy. You don't need to make your own document. Okay. So Camille, let's just talk about this idea of there's a lot of information there. Do people need to know all of this to go into a meeting?
Absolutely not. Do not be scared off by all the legalese that we put in this document. This document that is the 5-page guide to meeting with your MP, that's just so you have all the information. We know that there are some of you out there who really like to know all the details about legislation and have the capacity to absorb more of this and just want to understand it better. That's fine. That gives you an opportunity to read it through and really delve into the details and come up with as many arguments as you want, or as we've got in that document, against the legislation. But for others, you really don't need to know all these little details. What your MP needs to hear from you is that you are opposed to this legislation because you care about animals and it will harm animals. That is really the gist of what we want to get across to them. That's why we prepared this briefing note that you can leave with them so that they can understand it better. And I will say as well, most of the time, you're going to be coming into this meeting knowing more about the bill than your MP does. They will probably have received some party talking points about it. They're likely vaguely aware of it because of emails that have been coming through about it. MPs are really hearing from constituents about this, thanks to our Take Action page. but they're not going to be experts in what's going on. So you don't need to be an expert either. You just need to make your position clear.
Yeah, absolutely. And you may just decide like these are the key points that I think are important. I mean, it's very important to give them the answer that like, what do you want me to do? We want you to propose these amendments. And Camille, I mean, they're not going to be able to propose the amendments themselves. They either have to go their ag critic, or what are some of the other options? Like if they ask, what would you like me to do with this?
Yeah, that's right. MPs are really familiar with getting these types of requests from their constituents, i.e. you guys, and they know how to raise those up the party hierarchy. So typically the way that would go is there might be a caucus meeting where concerns can be discussed and raised. They might reach out to the office of the agriculture critic to share those concerns. They might reach out, if they're a government member, to the prime minister's office or to the agriculture minister's office. So they have a variety of ways of elevating those within their party structures.
Excellent. We've got so many great comments happening. Elizabeth out in PEI, who we all know and love, has offered if there's anybody in PEI who would like to do a meeting with their MP, she's happy to go with them. And Elizabeth is very confident in what she does.
And will know all the details in that document and can just spout them off.
Exactly. So if you're in PEI and you'd like some support, she'll go to whatever meeting you want to. So Elizabeth, maybe just put a message publicly for folks so that they can, if anybody here wants to get a hold of you, they can. But again, if anybody is in PEI, just put your info in there and we'll connect the right people. Cheryl thinking, Elizabeth, come to Toronto, please.
Ask her nicely, she might. She likes coming to Toronto.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So I guess a couple of the questions that I've seen come up, because we sort of polled people in the AJA Facebook group this week about what would stop you from meeting with your MP, Camille. And a couple of people said, I just can't get a meeting with them. They're not responding to me. They're not, so any advice for folks like that?
Yeah, I hear that one a lot too. It can be really challenging to get meetings with MPs. I will say one thing that we've got going for us right now is that the House of Commons did just wrap up yesterday. So that means MPs are going back to their riding for the next, essentially 3 months on summer break. Now it's not a break for them. They're not all on vacation. They're working, but they're working in their constituency offices. So because they don't currently have any parliamentary duties that are keeping them in Ottawa and out of the area where you actually live and where they live as well, it's often a lot easier to meet with them in the summer. So that's one thing. The second thing is just persistence is really the key. And I appreciate some of you probably are being very persistent and still having challenges, but the best advice we can give you is just to keep on those people and keep on their offices. If you are able to, email them, follow up with a phone call, follow up with another phone call, follow up with another email, and just keep the constant barrage of meeting requests coming. Sometimes that's enough to wear down their resistance. I will say as well, if your MP also has ministerial duties, they might be a minister in the government perhaps, you might just not be able to get a meeting. It might be really, really challenging. But sometimes what those MPs will offer you is instead the chance to meet with constituency staff. And these are the staffers who work in their local riding office in your community, who know quite a lot about what the MP's duties are, what legislation is moving through Parliament, and they can at least receive your concerns. Frankly, it really does the job almost just as much as meeting with your MP, because what we want to do is get these concerns on the radar so that staffers and the MP's office are aware that people are not happy about this legislation. We know, and it's very common knowledge among anyone who works in Parliament or in politics, that they track these concerns very carefully. And when phone calls and emails and meetings start rising above a certain level, they start to get quite concerned, and that helps elevate these concerns within the party structure. So the more contact they get, the better. The more persistent you are, the better. The more they feel like this is an issue that's not going away, the better.
Absolutely. And Camille, is it really important for people to make it known that they are a member of that constituency. Like Stephanie Itzak, who has done a wonderful job, an AJA here, who's done a wonderful job meeting with her MP on several issues, reminds us that put your address and phone number at the top of the email. That proves you're in their writing, and they really do need to get back to you. So it's very important that they know you're a constituent, right? Like that's our in here, right? Otherwise, we could go and meet with all these people, but it doesn't sometimes hold as much water.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Stephanie. Thanks for that really good tip, and thanks for emphasizing that, Kimberly. Yeah, and the way I like to think about this is they work for us. We elect these MPs, we send them to Ottawa to do our job. So you have to feel really entitled about getting meeting with them. Like, it is your right to speak with your constituent. It is your right to express your concerns to them. So just keep that in mind. Don't feel bad about badgering them. Don't feel bad about asking for something, because it is literally their job to meet with you, hear your concerns, and represent your voice in Ottawa.
Absolutely. And sorry, Camille, I want to go back to the staffer thing that you commented on too. Is it good that, like, if our MP is a minister of some sort, is it good right off the hop to just say, I'd really like to have a meeting with one of the staff members? Is that better, or should you ask, just so that that you're in the know, like you are conscious that you're probably not going to get a meeting with the minister, or should you shoot for it?
I would still shoot for it. It's not unheard of that people will get those ministers. It kind of depends on who the minister is. Like, I know of some who are really generous with their time and take those constituency obligations really seriously, despite also having ministerial duties. But then I know of others that, people in downtown Toronto have tried to meet with them for years and no one's ever got a single meeting out of them. So it's probably just realistic. So I would still ask for the MP's attention at first, but if it becomes obvious that's not going to happen, say, look, if they're too busy, can I at least meet with you and share my concerns?
Okay, great. And can you also tell us that how an AJA should represent themselves coming to an MP? Like, they're going to be showing an animal justice document, a brief. So to introduce themselves as a constituent, an animal advocate, and I support animal justice, who is, has this briefing document that you'd be interested in.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, like, one of the keys to this is it's better if this doesn't seem like a coordinated push by animal justice to have people meet with their MPs, but rather people across the country are just concerned about this issue. So I think it's fine to say that we produced this briefing document and they found it and they're sharing it with, you found the briefing document and you're sharing it with your MP. But maybe don't say that you're part of animal justice right off the bat. Just, say who you are, what you do, establish yourself as a credible person who's a constituent of that MP, who supports animals, and, you're just a reasonable person who cares about these issues, and you found a resource which you're sharing with them.
Okay, that's great. Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, so what about those that are dead nervous about meeting with their MP? What words of advice do you have for them?
I totally get it. I totally get it. They seem intimidating. They go to Ottawa, they're on TV, they're important people. They're just like all of the rest of us. I will actually say that most of the time when I've met with MPs, they've been lovely. Mostly they're very gracious. A lot of people really do get into this field because they care about representing the views of people and they want to hear from constituents. Not all of them, but in my experience, the vast majority are very, generous with their time and want to give voice to your concerns in Ottawa. So just try to remember that they work for you. Don't feel bad about asking for some of their time, because their time is something that they owe you by virtue of having this incredible privilege of representing their community. The second thing is to remember that they probably don't know about it, as much about this issue as you have. You have just sat through now 45 minutes of us talking about Bill C-275, talking about what it does. You know about the history of AGAG laws in Canada. They probably don't. AGAG laws are horrifying, but they haven't received as much national media attention as they should have. And so there's a good chance your MP just doesn't know all the details. And I'd say in almost all cases, you're going to be more on the ball with this than they are. So go into these meetings feeling confident, because you have the expertise in this. You're the one who's paying attention to this issue. You've got the briefing notes, you prepared for it. Your MP is probably just jumping off one Zoom and onto another and, fitting in a meeting with you in between.
Absolutely, yeah. And most of the AJers that we hear from that were nervous about a meeting after it's done say, "Wow, I don't actually know what I was so worried about." So, and even if you fall flat on your face from the ground, you can put that briefing document on their desk and crawl out of there.
Yeah, and the other thing is, a lot of people are worried they're going to be asked a question that they don't know the answer to. That is totally fine. If you don't know some legal nuance of the bill, you should not be expected to. And your MP probably won't ask a detailed question like that because they won't know enough to ask you in the first place. But if they do ask something that you're not sure about, it's 100% fine to say, look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not the expert in this, but you should contact Animal Justice, or I can follow up with them and get some further information to share with you. It's always fine to follow up with more information if you don't know something on the spot.
Thank you. Camille, Carrie brought up a really good point. She says, my approach is generally a personal one, depending on how the conversation goes. I may say that I care enough that I'm a part of AJA. It all depends on what response I get. But that just brings up the whole idea of this isn't necessarily an info session, folks. This is you connecting with your MP, like creating a relationship, like letting them know that you're a person that is cool and, has integrity and is great to talk to and is a great resource. Right, Camille? Like it's important to not just go in there and blah, 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 to take some time to get to know each other. Again, you're going to be leaving information with them, so you don't need to cover everything.
Yeah, that's such an important point. I'm really glad that you focused on that. It's true. Like when you think about what's persuasive to somebody, it's not being hit with a barrage of facts and not feeling like you're being attacked because your party supported this bill at second reading. What's persuasive is connecting with somebody one-on-one and understanding that they're a lot like you. They're a reasonable person. They've got these reasonable concerns. They have compassion for animals, and so should you. So yeah, I mean, I just really do want to emphasize that we've got to go into these meetings with a positive, like collegial attitude. Even if we're talking with conservative or Bloc MPs who we know are unlikely to support us or see eye to eye with us on this issue. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, if they come away with a negative impression from the meeting because, they felt attacked or, yelled at or lectured at the whole time, they are probably not going to support your issue in the future, and they will come away with a negative impression of the animal movement. The second reason is that for long-term relationship building, even beyond this bill, it's so important to develop those personal one-on-one connections so that next time you call your MP's office about another issue, they know who you are already. Their staff knows who you are. They're like, oh yeah, we had a reasonable good meeting with this person. It's fine to meet with them again. They might start to rely on you, and might start to consult with you on animal issues when they come up and they're not sure what to do about them. I've seen that happen time and time again, that people have built those personal relationships. So think about this in terms of being persuasive on the immediate issue, which involves a personal relationship and involves emotionally compelling information about how animals suffer. And then think about this too in terms of a long-term relationship with this person who's likely to be helpful to you maybe in the future as well. This is not the last time we're going to have to defeat bad legislation or convince MPs to vote for something positive. And you being able to come back to them in the future again is also a huge priority for this meeting.
Mm-hmm. And also, on that subject of personal connection, it's always great to say why this particular bill scares the shit out of you. It could be like, I had no idea what was going on in animal agriculture until I saw an undercover video in Ontario or in, BC or whatever. And I was astounded. And I think every Canadian should be able to see that. Things like that. Like it can just be, like, I love my dog so much. And so therefore this really hits me hard, so to bring that sort of personal and that also revs you up too, right? That really ignites you and you become a little bit more real when you bring in why it's important to you.
Yeah, those personal stories. I mean, humans love stories. Other humans love hearing about, how you came to care about animals. Your MP will really like that too. So I agree with everything Kimberly just said. And there's a really good module in the Animal Justice Academy training course. I think it's, what is that, week 2, Kimberly?
Week 3.
Week 3 with Gabriel Wilgen, who gives a really great overview. Gabriel used to be with HSI Canada. He's now a lawyer working in the States for the Humane League, and he has quite a lot of experience lobbying federal MPs in Canada. And he shares some of the tips he uses, but a lot of them involve connecting with that MP on a personal level and remembering that they too are a human. They might have young children who are crying in the background because they're working from home still. They may have just come from an event in their constituency office. Maybe they didn't get much sleep the night before. Just try to meet them where they are, have compassion for them as a human who's also probably pretty busy, and try to establish some sort of point of connection with them, some shared interest. Maybe you live in the same community or very close to each other. Maybe you went to the same jazz fest in the community the other week. Just find some way to establish that personal connection and remember that they're humans too.
Yeah, I love there is an AJA, or we posted about her meeting with a conservative MP who she knew would be against, was against what she was trying to promote. But she did some research. She just went on Facebook. She found out like that he has dogs. She found out he all volunteers for this. Like she just really got to know like what he cares about. And that really, the conversation went amazingly. And so that dovetails into Camille, a couple of questions. Natasha's asking, can you give some specific suggestions on how to talk to conservative MPs? So what might sway a conservative MP?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just mentioned, Kimberly, is like thinking about whether they have any pets, trying to do a little bit of research beforehand, or asking them about that is really persuasive. I would maybe think about leading with your own personal story of connection to animals. And remembering too that conservatives might be supporting this bill. That doesn't mean they support people abusing animals on farms. That means that the farm industry is powerful and has lobbied them, and they probably have concerns about people trespassing onto farms and private property, but they probably don't like animal cruelty either. So I would still start, or make sure you include at some point, how you personally, assuming this is true, were swayed by undercover videos. You could talk about how there actually aren't any laws or regulations at the federal level that protect animal welfare on farms. How we just don't have anything like that in this country to do better for these animals that we house, but we're housed by the thousands inside closed doors. Even people who are supportive of the farm industry are probably not going to be very happy about the animal abuse and cruelty that's witnessed. You could look up some undercover exposés. You could be in a position to describe what happened in them. If you're in a province where there was an expose in the last decade or so, you might want to do a little bit of research and be able just to describe in a bit more detail what you saw in that expose and how it affected you.
Amazing. Okay, so somebody else is asking. First of all, we're having a talk about making the document, the briefing notes for the MP, into a French document. So if anybody would like to volunteer to do that, any fabulous AJA, that would be very welcome. Please drop us a line in the chat, and we'll get back to you shortly. Leanne is asking, who else can we write to if our MP is already opposed? The Minister of Agriculture, maybe the Agricultural Committee, the Prime Minister. What would you recommend, Camille?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say for sure the government needs to hear from people. They have the most sway on that committee. There's one NDP member on the committee, and the one NDP member plus the Liberals on the committee are a majority. So if the NDP and the Liberals are on board, we could get good amendments through. So focusing on government MPs is a really good idea. I would say the Agriculture Minister's office should hear from us, and also the Prime Minister's office. Those are probably the two best points. The other thing you could think about doing is sharing your concerns on social media and tagging the relevant politicians. You could tag your own politician, you could tag the Prime Minister, you could tag the Minister of Agriculture. They pay attention to people's remarks on social media.
What's the name of the committee that's going to be studying this, Camille? Do you know?
It'll be the Agriculture Committee.
It'll be the Agriculture Committee. And are they the same made up? They're not the same members as the last time we did this, right? The different members
no,
now?
there would be some overlap, but differences.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just asking some of the questions that are coming up here. Do you think that if somebody is writing to their MP, should they be putting any CCs to the Ag Minister, or should you keep it very direct to the MP if you're asking for a meeting?
If you're asking for a meeting, I would just stick with your MP. If you wanted to send a more general email, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but let's say you're not successful in getting a meeting with your MP, you could just generally send your concerns. The more personal, the better. You could use an animal justice form to do that. But if you write directly to ministers, your MP, others who you think might be influential, that's always fine too.
Okay. So let's see. Someone is asking, is there only a chance for an amendment here, or is there still a chance the bill might actually not be passed?
Yeah, I mean, there's the parliamentary process is extremely unpredictable and a lot of stuff can happen. So we don't know for sure what the future brings. It's possible this summer the parliament might throw rogue, which is where the legislative slate is kind of wiped clean and things start again. That's something that often happens in the summer. It's possible that there will be an election before this bill progresses further. So there's lots of outcomes. We don't know which ones are most likely at this point. We just know that we have to prepare for the worst, which could very well happen.
Yeah, so the worst could be that nothing will happen until mid-September. Is that right? That's when Parliament, if things go as expected generally, Parliament sits again in mid-September, Camille, probably?
Yeah, September 18th it resumes. And
Okay.
I'm not sure what else the Agriculture Committee has on its plate. Sometimes committees are busy with other studies and it takes a couple months while a bill is just sort of waiting in queue. I'm not sure if they have other bills or studies they're doing first, but we could expect that the bill will be studied at some point after Parliament resumes, most likely.
Yes. Okay. So this is the perfect opportunity. Summer is the time, as Camille said, that MPs are back in their constituencies and they are more open to meeting with constituents. So this summer is go time, folks. And I'd say the sooner the better. Yes, Camille, just to really get the word happening around this.
Absolutely. The sooner the better. If you can reach out right away, they're heading back next week. They'll be in their ridings. I would try right away.
Okay, some more quick questions. Someone is asking, would it be okay to take the AJA logo info off the briefing document and change to wording that makes it seem more personalized?
Yeah, you can do that. Just don't represent it as an animal justice document, obviously, but feel free to change it if you want to.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you want to do something simple that seems more organic, fine. Let me see. Someone else is asking, would it be illegal to host an MP event, vegan barbecue or something?
I won't pretend I've looked at all the regulations around doing any of those things right on this call. So I don't want to give legal advice about what's illegal or not. I guess it depends on what that actually means, like an MP barbecue. Yeah, so I'm not sure I can answer that without more information.
Okay, so yeah, so just the idea of having an event, I guess, where you can invite MPs and then talk to them.
Oh, so, yeah, I mean, if you just want to hold an event and invite your MP, that's always something you could do. Yeah.
Okay. And someone is asking around, would you say that one of the amendments is more important than the other, the thing versus the applying to everyone?
No, I would not. I think they're a package deal and they need to happen together.
Okay, amazing. All right, someone requested, and I know Camille's got to go. We got to keep this tight today. Someone requested that we take another quick little look at the tracking documents. So just because this is an important piece, folks, this is how we're going to do the teamwork here. And thank you to Ina for putting this together. Okay. So once again, you're going to come to this bill, and I see a lot of you in here already, which is wonderful. If your summary isn't already up, you're going to go on these 3 lines, and that's going to open it up. If you do not know your riding, you're going to use this link here. Sorry. This link here to be able to find out what your riding is. You're going to choose your province. Okay, so we've got Ontario here, but we'll go down. So we've got British Columbia. So you're in British Columbia, and once you find out what your riding name is, it's by alphabetical order, and you just find where it is, and then you can click on it. So we're going to go to Burnaby now. And in these lines, you're going to put your name, email, and answer these questions. And if there happens to not be another space, just put your name below the person in one of the cells. We'll keep track of this and make it pretty for everybody. There are a lot of more questions. I think we've covered the main ones though. And folks, I would really invite you to read through the instruction document. It'll probably answer a lot of your questions, but really I'm hearing, Camille, that what we're doing here now is we are just, whoever you are, wherever you are, get in touch with your MP. And even if they won't meet, send them the information.
Yeah, send them the information, leave them a voicemail, send them an email, just make your views known to them.
Yeah. And folks, I can't understate how important you were to getting this bill amended so that it stopped last time. Okay. And it was a handful of you. It doesn't take that many, but it's going to take more this time because it's not just the NDP we're focusing on, it's the Liberals as well. Sorry, Camille, one more question, because I did notice it go by. What about the Bloc Québécois? Worth meeting with is just as much as the Conservative, or can they be swayed at all?
I think it's worth meeting with them. I'm not sure they can be swayed, but for the same reasons it's worth meeting with Conservatives, meet with your Bloc MP too.
Okay, excellent. And folks, I'm going to be sending out an email shortly to everybody that's on our email list with all of this information, all of the links. So if you happen to have missed anything, you're going to have that coming. It's also going to be in our social media. And I also invite you to invite other people in your constituency to join you, okay? Either to do their own meetings or to come with you. It doesn't just have to be AJAers, or it can be other animal advocates. So get out there, start getting people aware of what's happening and get some allies on board. We need as many as we can on this. So Camille, any last words?
I do have just one more thing I wanted to share, really exciting. As you know, this is going to be a major focus for animal justice over the summer. Today, we are launching our annual Summer Compassion Challenge. That is a 3-week fundraising campaign to help us get the resources we need to do this work, do this legislative work, empower our campaign against ag laws. Thanks to some generous donors to animal justice, monthly donations made during this period, so new monthly gifts, are going to be doubled for the entire year. So if you donate, $50 a year, that's going to be $600 over the course of the year, and it's going to be doubled by some generous donors. So if you have it within your financial means to sign up and take the Summer Compassion Challenge this year, that would just be amazing. We have a lot of work to do to combat ag laws. We still got our ongoing court case, which is very time consuming and expensive. And we are not giving up this fight, but we do need help. So thank you for your financial support, and especially today for your support meeting with your MPs, which is just going to be so important in stopping this bill.
Debbie Wall is asking, when is an animal rights activist going to win the Powerball? Whoever does, the Compassion Challenge is waiting for you. Kirsten has put the link for the Compassion Challenge in the chat, folks. We'll also put it in other info coming your way. But honestly, folks, we're doing everything. I see the lawyers on our team. They are working overtime constantly on our ag-gag court challenge in Ontario. We're trying to put out all these fires everywhere, and we're getting some good traction. But we do need the support to be able to keep going the way we're going. And I just want to share just a couple of little comments that came in. Let's see here. Tina, sorry, let me see who it was. Oh, I can't even find it. But anyway, there were some folks that were just saying that they're really psyched to do this. They've never done it before. They don't know if there's any hope, but they're going to do it. And that's what I love hearing. So let's see in the chat, folks, who here is pledging to contact your MP? Put a yes into the chat right now. Put a yes so that we can see what's happening. I love it. Yes. Hell yes. Okay. Oh, you are all the best, folks. Okay. Make sure you put your info. The yeses are keeping on going, Camille. Isn't this beautiful?
I love it. Seeing all these. Yay.
Amazing. So make sure you put your info in the tracking doc, folks, so that we can keep track of you and help you and support you in whatever way we can, and get you hooked up with folks. Folks, can we give Camille a great big Animal Justice Academy? Thank you. Not only for today, but for everything you do, Camille, for everything you do for animals, for advocates. Thank you, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly, and thanks to the rest of you too. We will chat soon. Appreciate
Thank you, AJers. Love you. Bye-bye.